Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. I'm really excited for this video. It's the start of a new series here on the channel, especially with December 15th right around the corner. We're starting trade guides, something we've never done on the channel before. These are things I've prepared off camera for NBA trade deadline live streams and talk about NBA trades throughout the course of the season, but I've never actually worked through a trade guide in a video. So this is the very first one. We're focusing on the Detroit Pistons, but there's going to be hopefully 29 more to come between now and February 9th, which is the day of the NBA trade deadline. We will be live that entire week on the channel as well. So there's a lot of great NBA trade stuff coming up. So make sure to leave a like on this video if you do enjoy the work that goes into these videos. And if you all are excited for the NBA trade deadline, remember, you want to hit that subscribe button so you're here for that type of content. Now let's get into it. For you Pistons fans, what are we going to be talking about in this one? Well, we're going to first look at some of those tradable players and the contract situations currently on the Detroit Pistons. Some key elements to that include guys who aren't playing as well as maybe you would like, maybe guys who are exceeding expectations and have higher trade value than you currently expect, and also guys who are on expiring contracts or, maybe 2 years left on their deal and Troy Weaver would maybe want to look at moving them. We also have to look at the draft pick situation for Detroit. What do they have able to move right now? Do they have some draft picks that they can send out? What does that really look like? Do they want to take in some draft picks? I think one really underrated element when it comes to trades that people don't quite understand when it comes to NBA moves and NBA transactions, long-term cap space to me is one of the most important factors when you're making moves in season. If you trade a guy who is on a deal that lasts more than just the rest of this year, you have the potential opportunity to open up cap space for yourself this summer. And I think Detroit's a really great example of this. They already are slated to have cap space, but we're going to look at their long-term cap space and what this season and this trade deadline could really mean for them. And then, is Detroit a buyer or a seller? Some teams are going to be in that buyer category. Some will maybe play 50-50 ball here and be in both. Some teams maybe don't buy or sell, and some teams will sell. So let's talk about each and every one of those teams. Of course, not necessarily just the Detroit Pistons, but we're going to talk about who they could be potentially selling or buying from. And then we're going to look at projected activity level as well. Something I think is really important. If you're a Pistons fan, you're going to want to know, is this team going to make a lot of trades? Are they going to make one trade, two trades? What are they going to do, right? That's what we're going to talk about to end off this video. So let's get into it. Tradable players here. Let's jump right in. We've got some guys on expiring deals, and this is kind of the genius of Troy Weaver here, who I think really fleeced the New York Knicks, trading that 2025 pick that he got from Jeremy Grant, and he moved that up to get Jalen Duren, and all it cost him was taking in some money here for guys like Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, and of course Kemba Walker, who there's a lot of dead money this year, but into next year he could be gone of all these players. Burks, Noel, both have team options, so other teams could look at them as expirings, which honestly, that's the way I would look at it if I was a team. And if I had a player whose contract I'd want to get off of, I would consider attaching a pick potentially, maybe a few second rounders to take in Burks and Noel, and then not exercise those team options. But some teams could look at those two guys and say, hey, those are role players who they've been in this league a long time. They could provide some value here. Burks is in his early 30s. Nerlens Noel's in his late 20s. Both of these guys could be impact contributors for a good playoff team. Do they swing playoff series? I'm less certain about that, but I think that they could have their positive moments, which every team's looking to add here at the trade deadline. Saddiq Bey, a player who kind of surprised to hear that he could potentially be on the move at some point. Troy Weaver reportedly is exploring some of those options. Now, I've had some Pistons fans say he might just be looking to sell him while his value's high, and that's not a bad move from him if that's the case here. I don't think that they should trade Saddiq Bey for anything. Honestly, like in terms of, just don't trade him to trade him type of thing. Now, if you're getting good compensation back, a lot of players in the NBA are available for the right package, right compensation. So I think Saddiq Bey falls into that category. A team wanting to trade for him right now, they look at it. He's got another year on his rookie deal right now. That second year is the final year, and then he becomes a restricted free agent. So a team trading for him would have good long-term team control, which is why you don't typically see a player like Bey get traded on his rookie deal because of how much team control is present. But it's not impossible. We saw the same thing happen with Tyrese Halliburton last last trade deadline, actually one of the most shocking trades last season. Then we have Bojan Bogdanovic, who signed his extension with the Pistons after getting traded there from Utah. That final year is non-guaranteed, though, so he's got really one guaranteed year after this season at I believe, $20 million flat. So a very tradable contract, $19 million, very easy for a lot of teams to match. It could take one or two players to get to that mark. It could take three or four even from certain teams, but Bojan Bogdanovic could potentially get moved. Now, again, I use the word tradable in quotes up there. Doesn't mean a guy's going to get traded for sure. These are just some of the players that I think should be on your radar, Pistons fans and fans of other teams, on who could potentially get moved from Detroit. Kevin Knox, another example of this. He's got 1 year left on his deal. It's a team option. You could essentially look at this as expiring. On that $3 million might be really important in terms of matching money to get to the 125% rule when it comes to NBA trades. Amadou Diallo expiring $5.2 million. Corey Joseph expiring $5.15 million. Again, those are players that if you're off by $6 million or $9 million in a trade, you can attach one, maybe two of them and get to the spots where you need to be to get a trade to actually work based on league rules. So you look at this right now, and I've got 7 tradable players for the Pistons. And you look at this and say, really the only guy you would factor long-term here would probably be Saddiq Bey anyway. So they've got guys that they're willing to move off of. More than likely, if they get good compensation for Bojan, they would look at it, right? If they get good compensation for Saddiq, that's the one I'm not sure if they're going to move, but I could understand them considering. So let's look at their draft picks. What do they have? Maybe they want to attach picks with these players. Well, that's not really a possibility here for Troy Weaver. They own their 2023 first, but it's top 18 protected. Right now, the Knicks own that. That pick has been moved, I believe, 3 times now. And you go all the way back to the Isaiah Stewart draft selection. This is how this pick got moved. So the Pistons will pick with their own selection. There's no question about that right now. This team is not winning a lot of games. I don't think they make it out of the lottery. They're probably not a playoff team in the East this year. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But the issue with this, since it's backed up all the way through 2027, as of right now, they cannot trade a first-round pick other than their 2029 or their 2023 or 2030, first-round pick. So it's very unlikely that a first-round pick is going out the door from Detroit. I just would be shocked if Troy Weaver is willing to part with 2029 or 2030 first at this point. It's just not very likely. A lot of teams are going to value those picks, and it's a risky game to be trading picks 7 years from now away with hopes of maybe building something. You know, it's a risky game. A lot of people seem to be low on the Lakers talking about that. If I was a team, I would really want those Lakers picks because I would say, oh, well, right now they don't really look that great. Obviously, they've been playing better as of late, but Anthony Davis would be like 36 by that time. LeBron James would be well into his 40s. Like, yes, please give me those selections because they right now don't have any of their other picks anyway. So you probably have pretty good compensation coming back down the road. But I understand why teams are also a little bit hesitant because, you know, you don't have your job guaranteed as a GM in this league either. So potential cap space. And this is really the important part here. Their practical cap space that they could have this offseason is $54.6 million. For those who don't know, that's a max cap space, a max cap slot, plus about $20 million. They have legit cap space, and this includes both Bojan and Saddiq Bey under contract. So if they traded Bojan, there's another $20 million you add to that. You get around $75 million in cap space. If you trade Saddiq Bey, you're sitting around $80 million in cap space, and you would still have Cade Cunningham locked in, Jaden Ivey locked in, Jalen Duren locked in, Isaiah Stewart locked in, Killian Hayes locked in. That's a good collection of players to have under contract because they're all on their rookie deals. And because of that, you could go out and spend a good amount of money in free agency, really upgrade your roster, and then come back and say, hey, look, we got this really good young core. Let's surround winning pieces next to him. And I think on the screen right now, I've got 3 really good examples of what winning pieces look like. Gary Trent Jr., someone for Toronto who, when he's playing his best brand of basketball, he's in the passing lanes. He's disruptive. He's a good physical presence defensively, but he's also a very nice 3-point shooter, and his offensive game has gotten better every single year he's been in the league. I think he's one of those ideal fits next to both Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. I think he'd be a significant upgrade to that kind of hybrid wing backcourt that they have when it comes to Cade, because he's so big. They can afford to play him almost as a small forward. Obviously, he has the ball in his hands like a point guard a good amount of the time when he's healthy, but ultimately, you understand my point, right? You have your 1 through 3 being Jaden, Trent, Cade. You feel pretty good about it. And then the Michigan boy, Draymond Green here, played for Michigan State, was one of the most beloved Spartans in his time there. I know some Wolverines fans are going to grimace at this, but a reunion to Detroit does make some sense. He has a player option for this season. He's somebody that I think could be a really nice option for them. Remember, they have nearly $55 million in cap space right now. And if they moved off of Bojan, that number could be even higher. It's very realistic that they could land all 3 of the guys on their screen right now. And it would significantly improve this team for sure. Now, I don't know if you want to go in on all 3 of these guys. I wouldn't recommend doing that myself. But Trent and Green, yeah, that's something I would probably want to sign up for. The mental toughness, the defensive capabilities would be greatly improved for this team. Something that I think already Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren are going to bring to this team down the road. Stewart's bringing it already. You would really fill out this roster in a pretty complete way, honestly, with just 2 of those signings. And I think, a guy like Kuzma would also be on your radar. Let's go through some of the free agents here real quick. Notable guys. Now, not everyone here is going to be a guy that the Pistons are going to look at, but it's a really good free agency class, honestly, especially if some of these players do opt out of their contracts. We've got Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, Fred VanVleet, D'Angelo Russell, some of the top guards at the point guard position. We got James Harden, Chris Middleton, likely both will stay on their contracts. Gary Trent Jr., who's on the screen, Bojan Bogdanovic from the Hawks, Karis LeVert, Malik Beasley, Dylan Brooks, Bruce Brown, Josh Hart, Seth Curry, Lonnie Walker. Really good guard class as well for the off-guard position. Then you have Cam Johnson, Matisse Thybulle, who's restricted. Both of those 2 guys are. Harrison Barnes, Will Barton, Kelly Oubre, Otto Porter, Justice Winslow, Yuta Watanabe. Power forward, we got Kristaps Porzingis, Draymond Green, both on player options. Jeremy Grant, Christian Wood, Kyle Kuzma, Kevin Love, Grant Williams, Jay Crowder, Jeff Green, Jackson Hayes, Rui Hachimura, the list goes on. I think a lot of winning players. Center, Miles Turner, Brooke Lopez, Jakob Poeltl, Omer Yurtseven, Nikola Vucevic, Andre Drummond. So there's players in there that I think can help teams win for sure. So it's a good summer to have cap space. And that's really my point here, is if they're looking at this long term, trading Bojan and getting value back might help this team lose more games right now, position themselves for their own draft pick, and open up cap space to kind of replace what Bojan's giving you right now and have it going into next season, where this team's maybe a little bit further along in their development, maybe a little bit more ready to really win games, and maybe you add an asset or 2 from moving off of him. So potential teams to discuss with. They could look at the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers right now are a team that probably interested in adding some veterans. That's where you could see Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, even Bojan Bogdanovic. Those 3 players all make sense to the Lakers. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I think, would have significant interest in Saddiq Bey. Outside of that, though, I don't see the Wolves having a lot of interest in other players here in Detroit. Toronto would have interest in Nerlens Noel. Right now, the Raptors are reportedly interested in Jakob Poeltl, something that I've been talking about for a year and a half at this point. That Poeltl back to Toronto, where he started his career, actually does make a lot of sense. Nerlens Noel is like the poor man's version of that. He's not as young as Jakob. He's not as good as Jakob, but he's going to cost a heck of a lot less. A 2nd-round pick maybe is all it would take probably to get Nerlens Noel. And this is a good example of Detroit just saying, hey, we're probably going to decline that team option anyway. Let's just get rid of Nerlens Noel for the last 2 months of the season and pick up a free 2nd-round pick, essentially. And I think that's a pretty smart move, honestly. The Charlotte Hornets would have a lot of interest in Saddiq Bey. The Miles Bridges situation, I think, really opens the door for them there to something that would make a lot of sense for them. I still think that they need a lot of wing play there. I just think that with where their team is, LaMelo Ball, his age, you want to get another young player like Saddiq Bey. I don't think that any of the veterans would really be on the radar just with how they played this season, but you never really know. Mitch Kupchak does make some interesting decisions. He's a really good drafter. The rest of the team building elements, though, I'm not sure. So who knows what Charlotte will ever do. And then Cleveland, I think right now you can make an argument that they could go veteran or they could go young here in a trade. Bojan, Saddiq Bey, both make a ton of sense for that team. They really need more small forward play. I know Bojan's more of a forward defensively, some of those limitations, but realistically, Cleveland should be looking at themselves in the mirror and say, why are we not a contending team? We have really great net rating on off numbers with our stars. We got a lot of good young talent as well. Why would we not want to add a good wing into the mix? And Detroit's got 2 of them to offer realistically here. So these are 5 teams that I think could potentially be discussing deals with Detroit. Now, it doesn't mean that these are the only teams. Doesn't mean that these teams for sure will. I just think these are teams that logically make some sense. Let me know in the comment section if you think I missed any. So let's get into the buyer or seller segment. And I think it's pretty clear with the way I've been talking all video. The Pistons are a seller. They're just not winning a lot of games this year, which is fine. For those of you who weren't around for the NBA draft, and that's really where I spend a good amount of my time is studying the NBA draft, making sure I've got all the prospects down on lock. I loved their draft. Jaden Ivey's right at the top of my board, and then you look at Jalen Duren, who is not far behind him. Those 2 guys were special talents in my eyes, and I think building blocks for this franchise. I really believe that. I was super high on Cade Cunningham as well. I had him number 1 on my board, like most people did, and I think that that's still very deserving. I obviously there's been other great performances. Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes. They're all great players, but I still think from the actual projection side of things, I still love what Cade Cunningham does. And I think the whole point of being a seller here for Detroit, the emphasis on long-term positioning. Go into this free agency with max cap space. Something I thought, hey, maybe they would be aggressive last year on Miles Bridges. Of course, that whole situation played out, and it's good that they didn't sign that contract before the news came out, because that would have been not bueno for them. But the emphasis here on long-term positioning for Detroit, I think, is about using your cap space wisely while you have it before extending some of your young guys. At some point, Cade Cunningham's going to start to cost serious money. Right now, he's a very cheap player because of his rookie deal. If you're able to get contracts on the book and then use bird rights to keep him around over the cap, that's the smart way to go about things here in Detroit. That's what Dallas failed to do with Luka Doncic, and I'm hoping we see Detroit do this correctly with Cade Cunningham, and I think they will. So, projected activity level. I think there's going to be lukewarm activity here from Detroit. I don't think that this is going to be a huge frenzy from them. It's really easy to say, oh, they have all these pieces, they're going to make all these moves. Yeah, you have to remember the logistical side of things here. To actually come across trades and make a big move like this that, could really set your franchise forward or backwards, it takes a long time to make deals. So what I'm expecting here is I think Detroit's going to be involved in a lot of 3-team deals because they have those veterans that teams will want, but they're not like veterans that are going to cost, 1 first or 2 first-round picks. It's like, hey, we'll throw in a second here, and we need to match some money here. Can we get Alec Burks in a deal to make this money work? That kind of thing. I think that works really well. The middling expiring contracts make transactions work really smoothly, especially at the 125% rule. For example, if a team's trading for an $18 million player and they need $6 million more, like I said earlier, that's where you attach a guy like, probably throw in Kevin Knox, and you also throw in a Hamidou Diallo or a Corey Joseph. Obviously, Pistons, they're going to say, oh, we're just throwing in Diallo, but, with some compensation coming back, of course, in terms of, second round picks, that kind of thing. They have decent veterans that teams will want. I've mentioned some of them already for specific teams. And then they also have those 2 very intriguing pieces in Bojan and Bey that I think would probably intrigue a lot of teams in terms of some of the teams that are younger, looking to add some more talent to their main core. That's where Saddiq Bey probably fits in for teams that are naturally a little bit higher on him. And then for Bojan, contending teams that want to make the playoffs, he makes a lot of sense for them, especially now that he is under contract as well. Team control is a big thing when it comes to the trade deadline. Sometimes you don't want team control and you want to be able to get off contracts. Expirings are very friendly in those regards, but also players who you want to keep around, like a Bojan Bogdanovic. The fact that he's under contract might make him appealing, especially since that 3rd year is not fully guaranteed, which does open some things up for that team too, giving them some cap flexibility. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. I put a lot of work in it. We have an announcement here. The trade deadline live stream will be on again this year. Like I talked about earlier in this video, we will be live pretty much the entire week of the NBA trade deadline. So make sure you're there for NBA content like this. A lot of work goes into these videos. This is going to be a series. All 30 teams hopefully will be covered. in a trade guide video like this one, which means there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of preparation on my part. Hopefully you guys understand that I, do put a lot of work in off camera to produce a video like this that is hopefully entertaining and informative like this one was. So Pistons fans, I hope you enjoyed. If you're fans of other teams, let me know in the comment section who to record a video for next. And my plan is to cover all 30 teams. I'm hoping to have a good amount of them done before December 15th so that the day the trade's open, we're going to have real videos up on the channel covering all the potential possibilities. But thanks again so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.